Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us tonight for this webinar on designing your exit strategy from the wrong job. It's really applicable to many of the points that we're going to be talking about are applicable regardless of if it's the wrong job or not, right? We'll be covering some special material about that. But really, how do you leave a job? How do you do so professionally so that it, doesn't hurt you in the long run? You always want to be professional. We'll be talking about how to do that and what you can get started on and how to take action. So I'm excited to be here and thankful for you being here as well with me. So let's go ahead and just get started. So this first slide, exit strategy, how to quit a job you hate or how to quit a job, period. What is an exit strategy? I'd like you to tell me, how would you define an exit strategy? Have any of you heard that term before? Maybe even outside of the career context, very likely. What do you think of when you think of an exit, defining an exit strategy? Just jot it in the chat box if you would be so kind. And I will give you a hint. The origin of the name of exit strategy is not from the career sector. It's from a different sector altogether. Any brave souls willing to put their definition in the box? Brock, thank you. Not only having a way to get out of your current job, but also a plan for your next. Yes, absolutely. Brock, it is so much more than just, I'm leaving, here's my position, what I've done, I'm out of here, here's my resignation and leaving. It's a much bigger endeavor if you want to be really professional about it and make sure that you leave on, on good footing, as possible, right? If at all possible. So great. We have a plan to leave on good terms with your employer while also keeping lines of communication open over the future, for the future. Great. PM, that's a great one. And definitely important. And, it's interesting because when you talk about keeping the lines open of communication open and professional for future, opportunities, there definitely are folks who end up sometimes coming back to a company. Maybe not if it's a job in a company that you didn't respect, of course, but if you just weren't really fulfilled in that role and you were feeling you needed to grow or somehow, for some reason, leave, go somewhere else, you might be able to still have an entrance strategy, if you will, should you decide to come back at some point. So that's a really good addition. Thank you so much. And then Dan shared planning to responsibly transition out of your position. And absolutely. And that is what it's about, being responsible so that you're not going to leave the employer, on alert or in a difficult, position, so that you can, help them with, okay, what's needed to be done? What do I do? How frequent? Those kinds of questions as well. And then, helping them kind of map out, okay, when I'm leaving, what needs to be done in this position as well. So very good. Not burning bridges. Yes, another great addition to that. And that's what I'm talking about. You don't want to burn bridges. You always want to leave, if at all possible, in a good relationship. And even if you had real issues with maybe the person, your supervisor, or whoever, you really didn't respect them or whatever, you still want to, if at all possible, leave in a way that they're going to feel that you did it professionally, so that when they're called, and that's the big, right, when they're called for verifying your employment, and when they talk to them, you don't want them saying, oh, well, they left just immediately, they didn't even give us any notice, they didn't do this, that, you don't want to be that person. So great. So wonderful. All righty. And a move with integrity and intentionality. Ooh, I like that definition, Larry. That is great. Absolutely. You want to be very intentional with what you're doing and maintain your, that integrity, and knowing that you're doing your best in the end to put together a plan and an exit strategy that's going to not only allow you to gracefully transition out of your role, but also thinking about, who's next in this, and what do I need to leave? What kinds of documents, what kinds of procedures do I need to outline? What do I need to show them, where things are saved? Because if you don't do that, what happens? without any kind of an exit strategy, and you just leave all of your work, like they may not be able to find your work. They may not know what what was needed for this partner. And that can be a huge headache and a huge, yeah, it's not a good thing to leave them in that kind of a position. So good. Thank you so much. So the exit strategy in and of itself, like a very, basic definition, and this comes from a different, sector, it really comes, exit strategy is oftentimes associated most with investors and sometimes entrepreneurs or investors, and how and when that plan for removing oneself as an investor slowly, with intentionality in whatever form. So it's oftentimes used most in that kind of an environment. But careers and all of that, jobs have really latched on to that, because ultimately at its core, right, an exit strategy is a pre-planned means of removing yourself from a situation, a specific situation, or investment in that context I was talking about, or job when we're talking about jobs tonight. So that's what it is. Why is it important? I think you've already actually mentioned much of that. If there's anything else to add to that, please feel free to put that in the chat box. But the things like, with integrity and intentionality, I mean, that's why it's important. An exit strategy is important so that you can maintain and you can make sure that it's going to be a smooth transition, that it's going to allow the employer to plug in new people, and help them understand the role, things like that. So I think you've already, gotten a lot of those. So we'll go ahead here. So thank you so much. So the importance, when I was saying here a little bit ago, it is really important in terms of like how you leave, right? And many people commented on that in the chat box, that how you leave is very important, right? It can have major impacts on your future career opportunities. And here's why. Because when there was a study actually that was done by Robert Half Company, and they own Office Team and many other divisions, but they did a study and asked, in how much, so they asked employers, right, the HR managers, right, how much does the manner in which someone leaves impact their future like opportunities, the person who leaves, right, the person who transitions out. And here's what you see in this image here, right? Greatly affects it 27%, somewhat affects it 56%. So affecting it is, that's like what, 70, actually 83% are saying that the manner in which you quit impacts your future career opportunities. And part of that is because, like I said, when people call your former employer, which they typically will, right? And they ask about, they verify your employment. They may ask what kind of an employee were they, they're going to think much higher of you, or much better of you, if you left in a way that didn't leave them in a pickle, or, where they didn't know, certain things. You really thought out the transition plan and you shared it with people. You did that formal resignation letter, you kept positive. We're going to talk about a lot of these things, tonight, but they said it's very important, right? So just another reason why it is important to think about being positive and really being intentional when you're leaving, and making this smooth as possible for all parties. Absolutely. So there's why do people quit? I wanted to talk about, yes, in part because they're right, they hate their job. That was what we titled this session, was designing an exit strategy from the wrong job, right? So poor fit. So that's clearly one reason, right? But if you look at this graphic here, you see, why do people quit? The majority, I mean, the largest response here is for more money. And that makes sense, right? As you get experience and expertise, you came into a job at a certain level, and then you've gained, your experience and such. They don't always increase your salary to that extent. And so oftentimes, very oftentimes, people are looking to go to another position where they're going to be better compensated for their skill set. And that's, so that's 44%, right? That's a huge number, right? But then there's other things on here too. You see with, the stronger, the sense of mission, right? If you really, you want to be a part of an organization that you feel more connected with their mission, that kind of thing. The not feeling appreciated, sadly, there are definitely companies that aren't as good at giving their employees that recognition, whether it's, financial compensation or not is totally optional, right? It may be just that they're able to, they give more praise and more, positive, constructive feedback, on, projects that are doing, you're telling them that they're doing a great job, showing them, right? Maybe doing what they can as an employer for the team, things like that, where you feel more acknowledged or appreciated, right? And then some, bored or unchallenged by their work, maybe you took a job, it could be that you took a job out of, desperation, which, let's face it, has happened definitely in COVID, for example. People have, not necessarily been able to just get a job in their exact sector necessarily, because maybe their sector was pretty demolished, temporarily at least, by COVID. And yet you do have to, pay the bills and pay rent, all of those kinds of things. So you needed to get maybe a job that wasn't necessarily your, dream job, but it was a job that paid the bills. And so that might be the case. Or it might be that, you've now grown in the job, and what was new to you is now very, oh, I understand this, I'm not really learning anymore, and I'm the kind of person that always wants to learn something in my, position. So definitely, I think that's, that can be important as well, right? And then, commute, let's face it, right? People don't like to, commute. And nowadays, it's kind of true, right? It seems like many of the employers are now looking to allow more teleworking, right? They've seen that it works. They've seen that it can work, even in, crisis mode, with COVID, where most everything was teleworking. They actually saw, I've heard some people that have talked about, when they asked if their job could be telework before COVID, it was like, nope, it has to be an in-person. It was just the way it was written to be that, and whatever. And now after COVID, it's like, oh, you can actually continue teleworking. So, big difference, right? So folks, can do that as well. And then, unhappy with your boss, certainly, not every boss is perfect. Not, and you're not asking for a perfect boss anyway, right? But you are ideally, I imagine the majority of you are looking for a boss that, is supportive, is open to feedback, isn't one that's going to throw you under the, bus, but rather, work with you if there are things you need to work on, and then, trust you. There's lots of things that we talk about. What kind of boss do we want, right? So not everyone is going to meet your needs, and there are different styles and different needs. Some people really want more of that hands off, right? Other people really want more of that mentor type of boss. So those are important things to consider when you're looking at jobs as well, and when you're connecting with maybe people who might have inside knowledge about the organization and or the people, what they're like, what their management style is like, all those kinds of things. So great. All right. So signs that you're in the wrong job. We're talking tonight about exit strategies from the wrong job, right? So several things on here, and I want to ask if you all have other ideas in addition to what's put on here. Please feel free to put those into the chat box. I would appreciate any additional insight that you might have. But one of the biggest ones I find with RPCVs is, the company mission not aligning with your own values, right? So, you typically, Peace Corps volunteers oftentimes have a positive experience in their Peace Corps service. They had a lot of independence, right? And take the ball and run with it, all of those kinds of things, right? And then they come back and they feel pressure to get a job. Oh my gosh, I need to get a job. And they might, make the decision to take a job that's not necessarily a job they're really excited about, but because it's got stability, or maybe it's like a federal government job, maybe in a certain agency that, maybe it's, you're thinking, well, it has good benefits and it has this, and I don't know if I'll get another job offer, so I'm going to take it. So, but yet maybe you don't feel that like call or it doesn't align with your own values. Maybe what you really wanted to do was hands-on work in the field, working with, I don't know, immigrant populations with an NGO or something like that. So, there can be, that could be a wrong fit then, right? Another one is if you dread Mondays, like it's all right. Sometimes, yes, the weekend goes fast. So it's like, wow, it just went so fast. I can't believe it's already Monday. But if you're literally like dreading Monday, you've got that pit in your stomach, like, oh, like I have to go back to work. I mean, that's obviously a pretty clear indication that you're not happy in your job. So whatever the reason is, right? It's, maybe the wrong fit. Things like that are oftentimes what's responsible. But another one is really, lack of kind of feeling a team or a strong sense of team with your organization or your direct team, right? Or do you feel like you have connections, whether it's outside sports or activities or whatever connections that you bond on, and that makes you have a stronger sense of a team, right? Or do you feel more like a loner when you're there? You really don't feel like there's a sense of teamwork there, and that's something that's important to you. That's a perfectly understandable reason to think about looking at another position, right? So the next one that's here, no respect for your boss, or obviously if the boss mistreats you or coworkers, or if it's not a safe environment, right, in terms of how you're going to be, if they're volatile, if they're there's different kinds of issues like that. Obviously that's a key sign, right? If you have any other ones to add to this list, please do put them in the chat box as I'm going through these right here. Ruminating, like outside of work. So if you come home and you're talking most of the night with your partner, your spouse, your roommate about how bad work is and this and this and whatever the problems are, and you just are really spending a lot of time outside of work talking about work, that's an indicator, right? You're not really happy with your work. That's not a good sign, right? If you're self-medicating, and this gets into whether it's alcohol or drugs or whatever have you, like something, whatever it is to help escape from the reality of what you're feeling, that's obviously a warning sign as well, right? And then loss of sleep. Some people when they get really when they get really stressed, or they're in their job and they're not really happy, a lot of times they start not to sleep well. Well, then when you don't sleep well, you're overtired, right? And then it's harder to perform well, and it's harder to keep that kind of go in and try to do the best that you can, that kind of give it your all kind of attitude. It's hard to do that when you're so tired and you're so disconnected and you're just not feeling good about where you are. And ultimately, when your gut is telling you, right, that it's time to leave. I'm a strong believer in the gut, right? I don't feel like our gut very often misleads us. The problem is sometimes where, okay, and if you trust it, it's oftentimes you might charge ahead. Like if you are like, yep, my gut says, that I'm not supposed to be in this, I'm putting in my notice, and leaving, all of that, where you don't have that exit strategy yet. You want to make sure that you take time to develop that professional and smooth transition plan so that you can, find another job ideally before you give up your current job. There are some times where that may not be possible. Maybe it is such a toxic work environment that it is impacting your physical and emotional health to an extent that you just really feel you need to escape from that job. And in that case, you may need to make that decision to leave without a long exit strategy and things like that. But you may leave before you have another job, right? We'll talk a little more about that in another slide, but yeah, that's definitely important. Is there anyone added here? I don't see any other comments. That's fine. Yeah. Was that Dan? Oh, sorry. Oh, I thought somebody had started to say something. That's fine. Okay. So things you can do while you're working on your exit strategy, right? One of the things is really work to change your perspective. And I love this quote that I found from, this is an individual from The Muse, which is one of my favorite sources, a career coach that has this quote here: when you loathe what you do, it's all too easy to just feel like you're biding time. You're just putting in your hours until you can finally escape, right? However, that sour negative attitude isn't going to make your life any easier. So on the contrary, actually, it'll make things worse, right? So if you just let yourself be negative, and you're going to go into this kind of, well, kind of a negative spin, right? But you're going to literally exude negativity or frustration, or things that you don't want to exude when you're trying to do a job search, right? Or developing an exit plan. You want to really try to look at it, even if it's been a difficult job, really looking at, what have you gotten from this job? Chances are, even if it was a really difficult, it's not the right fit, you probably learned some things from it, right? Maybe it's, you learned how to, take the ball and run with it, or you learned how to, stick with it even in challenging times, right? I mean, there's lots of things that you can get from that, but trying to change your perspective to being more positive. And I'm not saying like a Pollyanna, positive, hi, everything's great, it's all wonderful, certainly not saying that. You want to, honor and, the truth and such as well, but you don't need to, you can focus on maybe those things that you've gotten, and remain composed and professional, even in the face of, maybe it's not a professional type of environment, others are not acting that way. You walk that high, that high rope, that high line, and stay positive, and it'll serve you very well. And we'll talk more about that a little bit as well. So what you can also do when you're working on your exit strategy is practicing gratitude. And this is really an important one. I have been doing some research as well on like gratitude, and how important it is, how by practicing gratitude, even if you're really frustrated in, your job, or you're really in a difficult space, by practicing gratitude, you can really change, it really has to do with changing your energy, and really, increasing your awareness of, and being in touch with yourself, and, and what you are thankful for, right? Even in the midst of a huge storm, an awful work environment, whatever, there are things, little tiny things that you can be grateful for, that may or may not be at all related to work, right? It may be, things like the birth. I'm grateful for the birth of my, niece, my new niece, and whatever. Like, it's things like that, like, but focusing on gratitude, and actually, they advise you, studies, have been done, and research has really advised writing, having a gratefulness, like a journal, right? Today I'm grateful for, and, there's a challenge that you actually do, where you write down 3 things that you're grateful for every day, and try not to say the same thing too often. I mean, it may come up more than once, but really try to find different things is what they recommend, right? And then you can journal. You just have a journal, and you can just write those in there, right? If you want, you can write it in more of a paragraph style. Today I'm grateful for, and you just, write the first thing. I'm also grateful for. You could write it more like a, story, if you will, or a it doesn't have to be, what I'm saying is, it doesn't have to be just a list. Now, it could be a list. If you're in a point where you really are having a hard time even taking up that kind of a challenge, it might be a list. Today I'm grateful for 1, 2, 3, and just, you can, say those. They encourage you to journal about it a little bit if you can. But again, it's just, practicing gratitude. I know with my family, we started a practice where we have a gratitude jar, and we will put, things that we're grateful for. Now, we had wanted to do it every week. I think we need to do it more often, even, because otherwise it's hard to remember to do it. It's like, oh, on Fridays, you just got to have it as part of a, ritual, weekly ritual, or whatever frequency. But I see real value with doing it as, as a daily one. And I have an 8-year-old. So, we're looking at, trying to help her, develop that mentality of gratitude, and focusing on what we're grateful for, instead of maybe what we want, or what we don't have, or what we're worried about, things like that. So it can really empower you, and I just would encourage folks to do that kind of a thing. So let's see. Karen said, "Can you speak to wrong job versus wrong sector?" Yeah, for example, health system constraints where health work is challenging. So yeah, so Karen, are you saying in your situation it's more like the wrong sector and you would like to do the same kind of work you're doing but in a different sector, or are you're saying health system constraints where health work is challenging? Um can you, if you can unmute yourself, you're welcome to do that. We let that option open. So you're more than welcome to unmute yourself and just clarify, and I'm happy to address that.
Yeah. Thanks again for this session and really important topic. I was just interested in just clarifying for myself. I really like one-on-one patient interactions,
Yep.
but some of the frustrations I have are way beyond my control, like COVID and not having enough PPE. And does that mean like not being able to control the health system constraints, that it's the wrong position for me because it's out of my control and I want something that's like more within my control, like quick wins of patient care versus health policy work.
Yeah.
So just processing a lot of what's the appropriate workplace and the personal impact I want to achieve. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Karen. That helps. Thank you so much. And I know you, and I know you're, what a compassionate person you are and what a connector. So I can totally see why you would want that direct patient care or that aspect, right? Where you're actually helping people and you're seeing the impact and all of that. I mean, that makes absolute sense versus maybe something else health related, whether it's health policy or other things where maybe you're not having that kind of individual impact, right? Or that connection. Yeah, I mean that's a tough one because right now I think especially in the field that you're in health, right? Health and healthcare, you do have so many additional challenges with COVID, and all of the complexities that come with that. um so it's, yeah, that's a hard one, and that's not changing anytime. I mean, I hate to say it, right, but that's likely not something that's going to be changing anytime soon, as we have the Delta variant and other issues as well. So it's hard to know when that's going to stop or end, or when it can get back to maybe what it typically is, which maybe is more of that one-on-one care and not the concern, with COVID and everything. Yeah, I mean, and I think if you are going to think about different sectors and exploring them, I mean, I would absolutely recommend, talking when you talk to people, and you're really good at networking, I know that as well, but talking to them about and sharing with them, your passion for, in your case, really connecting with and having that contact, that client interaction, or whatever team interaction where you feel very, very much in that mode of, your work physically impacting and impacting others and helping. The ability to see that, I think that would be very important as you discuss and explore any other ones as well. So thank you for that question, Karen. And I'm happy to talk to you more about that on a one-on-one. As you know, you can certainly reach out to me and you have my address anyway, but jody@rpcv.org, you can reach me at, and I'd be happy to talk to you more about that, and kind of help you as you're weighing maybe different options. And, that's what it comes down to, right? Is finding different options and then weighing kind of the pros and cons and making difficult decisions. That was actually one of the, we did a webinar on that just recently on, how to make difficult decisions. And that I think is posted already, but if it's not, it will be, I will definitely get that posted. And yeah, so we have some other assistance for you as well. So great. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. All right, let's go on here. And again, thank you. Please continue to put your questions into the chat box, and I'll be happy to share those. Um, Dan, my colleague is here in the background, and I definitely want to ask Dan, is there anything that you want to weigh in on so far, or any kind of points? I know you have a lot to contribute as well.
Thanks, Jody. I'm really excited about this session because, of course, a lot of us, especially early in our career, we go into most of our jobs knowing that it's not going to be your last job or the job you want for the rest of your life or your
Right.
professional career. So I think it's a really important topic, and I've seen so many times when people treat the job like it's just a stepping stone from the very beginning, and I think it's really important to be planning for your next move from the beginning, but doing it in a way that is responsible, is good for the organization, and respects the position and the needs for the job that you're in. So I would say that the transition that we're talking about now should always begin from the moment that you're entering a job that you don't think is going to be the last job of your career. Granted, I think everybody that's listening to this or watching this or participating now probably is already thinking that it's time to leave the position that they're in. And what I'd like to talk about at some point here, Jody, and you
Yeah.
can cue me when it's the appropriate time, is when you're talking, when you're networking, when you're interviewing for the new job,
Yep.
how to talk about the job that you don't like. So I don't know if now is
Yes.
the right time, but let's come back to me when
I will.
it's
And you
the
know
right
what?
time
There's
to.
there's a
Yeah.
slide that actually talks about the interviewing and job stuff, and that will be a perfect place for you to talk, because that is so important, right? How do you answer some of those questions? Why are you leaving, your current job, and things like that. So thanks. Thank you, Dan. That's great. So let's go things that you can do while you're in this, you're working on your exit strategy, right? So some of the things that you can be doing are things like, and this is exactly what Dan was talking about, and you updating your job application materials, so your resume, right? Your LinkedIn, and now if some employers, and I wouldn't say it's a majority of them certainly, but you're asked to do a 2 week notice generally as professional, right? But some employers will say, once we know you're leaving, you're done. Like, you leave immediately. So you want to be, careful, especially if you're like updating your LinkedIn and doing some different things. I mean, if you suddenly do a whole overhaul on your LinkedIn and it's broadcast to everyone, that's the kind of the default, right? People are like, oh, she must be looking, or, right? But there's a way on your LinkedIn one to not advertise that. Like, you can make the changes, but not advertise it. So nobody gets a thing saying, hey, Jody's updated her, LinkedIn. So you can get around that, right? Um, cover letters, and then begin applying. I mean, that's what it comes down to, is really, I mean, you've got to, ideally, you want your exit strategy to include getting your next job before you leave your company, if at all possible, right? To not have that like period of no earnings but equal expenses, and trying to make it on that. And of course some people do save for that, and actually they do recommend that you save so that you have like an emergency fund of, I think generally it's recommended to have 6 months savings, to be able to cover 6 months of your whatever your daily, your living costs, and that's a lot of money. So it's not easy, but definitely it's so you're applying. You're not going to generally, I mean, it takes a little while to get a job generally. Some people get the first one they go for, but that's very rare, right? So you have to start applying, and then you really are talking about, if you get that interview, which is great, it really means you're a top candidate already, because they only interview generally, right? Maybe 4 to 6 people, right? So you already know you're in the top if you get to the interview. And that's where it is so important, as Dan was saying, and I'll let him speak more about this, about how you talk about your job that you've, just, the job that you're leaving, that you're currently in, because some of those questions are really common, like, why are you looking to change? or what draws you to this position versus what you're doing currently, or, all those things. And you want to obviously be very professional you never want to badmouth an employer. And I'll let Dan say a little bit more about this, but Dan, why don't you talk a little bit right here? This is fine. Thanks.
And just from an interviewer perspective, what I would uh, caution everyone to think about as they're going into an interview when they're still holding a current position is that there's often a trap, and I'll ask candidates this question as well of tell me why you're leaving or interested in leaving your current position. And that is absolutely a trap, gotcha question because I want to know as the interviewer, are you going to throw our organization under the bus if you don't like the experience? And if you badmouth your current organization or your current boss as your potential future boss, I don't want to go anywhere near you. And maybe it's a good story, maybe it's a really terrible person, but there's ways that you can respect the organization that you're with, and at the same time just let the person who's interviewing know that it's not a good fit, that you are working diligently, and you're looking for something that will better use your skills, or that is more in line with your professional aspirations. But as soon as you start throwing your previous employer under the bus, as an interviewer, start taking a step back from the table.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dan, can I just add to that? In the
Please.
end of whatever you were saying, when you said, I'm looking for an opportunity that I can utilize my XYZ skills, second, the next thing you want to say is, and that's why I'm so interested in this opportunity. It seems a perfect fit for me given my proven XYZ and blah blah blah, whatever. You take it right to that. Like, why? Because that shows them that you're excited about them as an employer, and that you're looking at what you want to do and what you can bring.
Yeah. So there's also the, when do you let your current employer know that you're looking around question, and that really is going to be so dependent on your relationship with your supervisor. Ideally, your supervisor, I mean, everybody should hope for the job where your boss is looking out for whatever's best for your future.
Yeah.
And if you have that type of boss, or if you even think you might, there's ways to let them know that you're interested in moving on within the organization, or outside of the organization. I think you can let them know that you would like their input on your profession, on your career, and just kind of feel them out. I think this is how I've handled it in the past. I'd like to talk to you about my professional future, and have schedule a meeting with your boss about that. And usually a boss is going to take that meeting and give you some thoughtful comments. I think it would be really an unfortunate situation where someone would not have that conversation with you. So during that kind of conversation, you use your emotional intelligence to tell whether or not this person's really going to go to bat for you if you start applying outside of your current office. And you want to do that as early in the process as possible. But we're all afraid that we're going to burn a bridge within the current organization if things fall through with the job search that you're on as well. So I think this is the dance that Jody knows very well, and why we're all tuning in to listen to her. What is the appropriate time to tell to your current employer that you're leaving? Like Jody says, you don't want to spring anything on them, because if you are looking to come back, and I see this all the time in my career, especially in international development, it's like a revolving door. People are coming back into the same organization over and over again as job tenures become shorter and shorter. So you definitely want to leave on good terms, and that 2 week, preferably 2 month notice is really important for transition planning for the organization. And if you don't do that, then your name can become mud.
Yeah, I mean, just to add on to that, I would say, I mean, the minimum of the 2-week notice is professional courtesy, right? Thank you so much, Dan. That was great. Really appreciate your thoughts there. But as Dan said, more if you can, and if you have that trusting kind of a relationship where, you know, you don't think they're going to just like put you out then, which they can. I mean, in many jobs, they could just say, nope, you're, you know, if you're leaving, we're done. And you know, but yeah, it's great if you can give them more notice, because the more notice you can give, the more they can think about, okay, what do we need to consider when we bring somebody in? What would and they can even ask for your input. The boss can be like, what kind of a person do you think would excel in this job? Like, what are the key skills we need to? And they may even ask you for your opinion, which is great, right? You can give them, you know, your insight from being in that position and all of that. So that is really important. We do have a few questions here that I wanted to take, and thank you for bringing those out, and please continue them. I'm going to take Brock's right now on, can you talk a bit more about potential future conversation with the supervisor? What kinds of things would you ask? I'm gonna I'll let Dan weigh in on this one. Certainly, the one thing that I'll say before I maybe turn it over to him is the potential future. Like if you're talking about when you're having that job, that I'd like to talk to you about my professional, you know, future and things like that. You can ask for maybe in additional responsibilities, maybe, you know, to say, you know, I'm really, or if there's an area in the organization that you really want to get skills in, as long as you're performing in your work, maybe you could say, you know, do you think, you know, I'm looking at long-term moving in the direction of, you know, data analysis. I'm wondering if there might be any possibility of me participating in XYZ, whatever, like that units. When they're doing that, I would love to learn more about their experience and, you know, and just, you know, increase my skill set. Things like that, I think is perfectly fine to ask them, right? And honestly, the employers at that point, when you're talking about your professional future, you know, if they want to keep you, which chances are they will, you all are awesome, right? They are probably going to be open to those kinds of things, to say, yeah, sure, that would help this person to you know, be here longer, right? So Dan, do you want to add anything else to that?
First of all, I don't think, unless it's a really an entry level associate type position, I don't think a conversation like that should happen in the first 6, maybe 12 months of being on a
Yeah.
job. That then as a supervisor, I start thinking that this person's way too eager to get out of the job that I just hired you for, and I don't want to go through the hiring process again. So, geez, can I just get some stability in this position? Yeah. No, if it's a professional job, I would say if you have managerial or middle management responsibilities, I think once you're a couple in your second year, it would be appropriate. Maybe at your first annual performance appraisal or your second performance appraisal, say that you'd also like to talk to them about your future. You always want to let your supervisor know that you're eager for growth within the organization. I mean, that's unless you're just happy with the position you've got, which knowing RPCVs that we're talking to, you're usually a fairly ambitious group. You want to have that conversation early on. What are my options? What can I do to get more responsibility and position myself for moving up the ladder in the organization? And sometimes you get to the top of that ladder, or the promotions that are available aren't going to happen for a long time, or you just don't have the experience and skills needed for the next step in that ladder. And that's when, Brock, I would say, if you have somebody that you can talk to about, you say, I really would like to do this in my career, whatever that next or final position is in your ideal career path, and ask them. Is often your supervisor will have gone through something similar job search process in their career, and they'll have advice for you about what skills you need to get to achieve whatever that level is. I mean, it's so sector dependent, so it's hard for me to give all these hypotheticals. But in the international development sector, you often get to the top of the NGO, the nonprofit. For example, you get to the top of your chain with a coordinator level position, and you just need to go to a smaller project or a smaller organization where you can get some supervisory experience with a smaller team, or and that's often what it is you need to get some supervision experience for some additional responsibility. And if that's not happening in your current organization, I think you just say, I personally have asked this before, would you be willing to be a reference for me if I apply outside of this organization? And hopefully they would say yes.
Yeah, and I think if you do it in a way that you're giving them adequate time and you're having this conversation, all of that, they may very likely be willing to do that. Now, if you know that they wouldn't give you a good recommendation because of whatever's going on, maybe there's issues and all kinds of things with the employer, maybe he or she's angry that you're leaving, who knows, you may not always be able to ask them for a written reference. But the other thing that comes up with that is, a lot of times employers, when they're, when you're applying for a job, you're not always putting your current employer as a reference. You're not always putting that because you don't want, because you're still working there, right? You don't want them to contact them. Or a lot of times when you give your references, like for federal, they'll say, is it okay? You could either say, don't share reference, or ask me first, or okay to contact. It was like to contact them, right? They'll say, here's my reference. My current employer is, John Smith, and it's okay to contact this person. Ask me first, or no, please don't contact. So it's very, very okay to put don't ask me first, because yes, if you are one of the finalists and you were at that stage that they're doing references, that's a really good sign. That means that you are either the top candidate and they're just checking your references, or maybe between two and they're like, gosh, I don't know, let's go out to the references and see which ones comes out better. So you're way up there in that. So it makes sense to to then ask them, but with federal, you can put ask me before contacting, which I like. Not that they always do it. In general, they're supposed to, but I've heard of situations where they haven't respected that, and that's kind of hard too. So so great. We do have a question from Larry on, should you consider unemployment benefits in an exit strategy? So I take it from that, Larry, you're wondering if, would I qualify for unemployment, and should I factor that in? Absolutely. I think you would factor that into what your exit strategy is, right? Now, remember, if you voluntarily leave a position, not laid off, not, that if you voluntarily leave a position, generally you do not qualify for unemployment. There may be some exceptions to that. I am certainly not an expert in, Social Security and unemployment benefits and all of that. All of those things that can impact in jobs. But you would definitely want to do a little research on, do I qualify for, and like get that answer of whether or not you would qualify for unemployment benefits. Now, people, because of like being laid off, because of COVID, or, the industry, let down, all of that, yes, they would qualify, definitely. But actually leaving on your own before you have something else would generally not qualify you for the unemployment. So, all right, let's go on to the next one here. Exit strategy wake up call. I like this, and it's by a career coach, that Morgan Quist, and I really like how she's like put it together, right? If you're waiting for, when you're thinking about putting together your exit strategy, right? And this is like a wake up call, right? If you're waiting for the perfect time to notify or to move ahead, right? To like go ahead and like look for jobs and get something else and move out of your current job, or you're waiting for a guarantee, like I want to wait until I know I'll be successful in getting another job, or I want to wait until, I have everyone's full support, in this, and I'm not quite ready. I want to feel 100% ready. It's, if you wait for all of those before you take action on, moving toward your dream career, right? Of what you want to be doing, what's going to be more fulfilling, you're going to be waiting forever, right? Because nothing's going to be, nothing's going to be 100% like, oh, this is absolutely the perfect time. And there's no guarantee of success, but you've got to, you can do what you can to make yourself all set, to get that job, get another job, all of that. And you just need to take the leap when it's time, when you've realized that it's time, and all those other things we've talked about are, you're feeling that it's time, right? So really taking that action, and more than anything, listening to your internal voice, right? Not the external noise, not everything around you, but not feeling guilty because you'll be putting your current employer in a rough position because there will be nobody to do this, and the holiday whatever's coming up, and they need, like, if you go down, I mean, yes, it's great that you're wanting to be like, make it as least impactful as possible, or at least the least difficult as possible. And you can do that to some degree, but you can't 100%, because if you stay around for all those reasons and wait for all those things to take place, you're never going to take action, and you're going to be in this wrong job for a long time. And that's not healthy for you either. So I liked that one. I thought that was a good one there. So advanced preparation for your exit strategy. And there is another question that I'm going to address as well, that's in here. But when you're talking about your exit strategy, these are kind of some of the points that I think are really important to convey, right? Don't resist the temptation to act rashly and just like quit on the spot. Like, you get so angry and so upset, you're just like, I'm done, I'm out of here. You really try to avoid that, because the reality is, well, I should say, unless you're independently wealthy, or you have somewhere where you can be rent-free, everything for a long period of time if needed, that you have a backup, right? Because if you're acting on your emotions and you're just angry in that moment, you could end up in a situation that's much more precarious, where you don't have any position, you don't have any job, you have no income, you don't qualify for unemployment because you quit, right? And your references are probably not going to be great when they say they didn't give us any notice, she just left, whatever. So try to avoid doing that. Try to really think more through your exit strategy. So, and laying the groundwork, right, for your future job. What I mean by that is, work on your doing your, like, visioning, where do you see yourself moving toward, right? What is your, like, what kind of sector or what kind of path are you looking at before just up and quitting, right? Like, really spending some time getting to know, exploring, researching those different, maybe career paths of interest to you, right? It might involve doing some self-assessment, right? To find out, what am I really good at, or what kind of job would I be good at? And, you might even want to, tap into Dr. Rhonda Anstead is a consultant, and she's a career coach, and she does each month with me the podcast on Ask the Career, Coach, questions, where we answer your questions. You could explore her. She allows free access to her My Career Design Studio, and it's for a 4-month time period. You get to explore it free. So she has some great activities, like a napkin sketch, and some awesome other activities that help you get more in tune with, what do I want to do, or what kinds of skills do I have, which will be helpful then to identify what kinds of jobs would be great for those. So do that kind of thing as well. Activate and expand your network, right? There's no time like the present to reconnect and connect with others. And again, in connecting with others, you are part of the Peace Corps family, and that's one of the best. It's a family. And so really, thinking about and connecting with your family, you can do that through LinkedIn. Do the people search, where you search for, and former company Peace Corps, just Peace Corps, and you choose the official Peace Corps logo one, right? And then current company or sector, fill in the blank, and chances are you're going to find some people that way. So do those kinds of things as well. Prepare and update your resume, like we said, for what you're looking to move into, because you have your master resume, but you're never going to really submit your master resume, I hope. You really should be submitting the tailored ones that, for each of the jobs. Okay. Save some money, like I was saying here, recommending, 6 months living expenses as an emergency fund. And I know that seems like a lot of money, but it costs a lot to live. And even when you really down your expenses, if you can start before you even, you're thinking maybe, okay, I'm thinking I'm going to try to exit out of this job within the next 6 months, like try to start saving money each month. And maybe it's cutting down on those, mocha, whatever at Starbucks, and put that into your fund instead. Funny how fast that built up because those are so expensive, right? So do that, right? And then creating, a transition plan, right? Really detailing like your work, what the parts of it are, the frequency that you do it, who the contacts, if there are people that you work with on that, because those are all really important for your employer and they will appreciate that. And chances are, when you leave them with such a well thought out, well constructed, exit plan, they're going to probably speak higher of you, more highly of you when they're doing a reference check, things like that too. So and then let's see, yeah, giving at least 2 weeks notice. We already covered that, right? Writing a formal letter of resignation. You should talk to your immediate boss first, is what they say generally. Your immediate supervisor. You want to notify them first. Don't notify other people in your organization yet. I mean, like, news spreads like you can't believe, right? So even when you have, friends that you're pretty close with there, I would really encourage you to make it a practice to have your, you have the first person that hears be your, immediate supervisor, and then do that formal letter of resignation where it includes, when you're hereby resigning effective whatever date, and and be positive in that. Thank them for the opportunity, for you're very grateful for that, and you are enclosing a transition document. You're preparing a transition document. Some people will put it right in there, but you can do it apart as well, that you're preparing it and that you will make sure that this is as smooth of a transition as possible, things like that. So anything you want to add to that, Dan? I know we're almost out of time, really.
Jody, I just want to go back to one thing that you said, is that,
Yeah.
to practice of gratitude in
Yeah.
and exiting any job, even if you hate everything about the position you're in. Being very gracious as you depart is going to leave a very good impression. And I've had people who I didn't really know very well, and I say volunteers, and when I was overseas managing Peace Corps volunteers, you'd have like 100 or 200 people. Some of the volunteers you as staff had good relationships with. Some, to be honest with you, I was lucky if I knew their name, if I caught them walking down the hall, because I'd only see them a couple of times a year.
Right.
And then maybe they weren't in my sector, but some of those people that I didn't know very well would come in and tell me how much they got out of their experience, and how some training that I did with them impacted them in such and such a way. Those are the people that I remember later on when graduate schools and other employers start calling for
Yep.
reference checks, because they leave with a very good impression. They say how much they got from me. We don't want to teach you to or coach you to brown nose or to be
Right.
disingenuous, but do scrape the bottom of the barrel if there's anything nice that you can say to your supervisor, your managers as you're leaving the organization. Be specific. Point to don't just say that it was the best job. You want to be very specific in what it was you got out of it. Recommendations for making it better, I think, are always very welcome. A transition memo is not something we talked about, but if you're in a leadership position that you're transitioning out of,
Yep.
a very detailed transition memo that you share with your supervisor and make available to your incoming replacement is probably the most professional thing that you can do, where you just you give them every login password and go into all of the issues that your position dealt with, and recommendations for how to deal with them. That is a very good professional way to leave an organization, and leaves everybody with a good
Yeah.
memory of how professional you were. So
Absolutely.
I'll stop there. And Jody, really good conversation tonight. And I encourage those of you who are listening to contact Jody if you are in a situation where you're struggling with how to delicately have these conversations.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
And
absolutely
myself, and
happy to
I'm also
help.
available. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to help. I do want to respect folks' time. I totally understand if you need to sign off. And I do want to answer the one final question that is in here from Patrick, because it's a really good one. And I'll answer that very quickly, and then we'll sign off. So if some of you have to leave, that's fine earlier. But the question is it appropriate to ask a current supervisor or colleague to be a professional reference when planning an exit and prior to accepting a new position outside of my current firm? So I'd say that depends. The answer is going to be it depends, which I know people hate because it's, whatever, but I'll talk to you about it in a moment, why you might not. But for example, USA Jobs asks for my references, exactly, asks for my references for my next potential employer. I'm sorry, I went down too fast. When it, for example, USA Jobs asks for references even in current positions, and my current boss and other current colleagues would be great resources for my next potential employer to talk to. However, I would not like to reveal, I'm leaving before being interviewed. So that's a good question, right? Sounds like you have had a good relationship, maybe assuming you've had a good relationship with them, and that they would talk well about you. I think eventually sharing it, but to put it out there right away, like if you're doing USA Jobs, I would put ask me first. And they're okay if it's like one of them's do not, contact, or maybe you put somebody else that's not your direct employer. Maybe it's trying to think if there's people like within the organization that you worked a lot with, maybe in another department, that kind of thing. Maybe you could put them as, maybe it's like the supervisor in the communications area, and you could put them for a, initially, or, yes, I'm okay to contact or after, like, please ask me before contacting. That should signal them to contact you. And if they're contacting you and saying, we want to talk to your reference, that's a really good thing. That's when you're kind of in that final kind of crew. And then it would be up to you whether you think, would you be comfortable then? What risk would there be of you, sharing with your employer, I've really enjoyed, my time here. And maybe you spend time right now, I'm looking, at opportunities for professional development. And, if there are other things that I can take on, let me know, like, so that you let them know that you're looking to like be, like moving up. Then it's no huge surprise if and when they get you contact them to say, hey, there's an opportunity that I just learned of. They're wanting to talk to my current employer. Would you be willing to chat with them? That's going to come down to how you feel, how would they respond? Would they respond well to that? Would they be open to that? But you can kind of set the scene and kind of lay the groundwork for more positive interaction by having what Dan was talking about earlier, that kind of professional growth, professional development kind of, conversation with them, where they know that you're, looking at, ways that you could maybe gain additional skills in XYZ and within the company at that point, right? So they know that you're looking for professional development and growth, and it's not going to be of any surprise eventually that you might be interested in something else. I hope that helps, Patrick. It's all about planning a fulfilling career. That's what it's all about. So and taking efforts to do what you need to do. And I love this quote here: difficult roads lead to beautiful destinations. So I think a lot of times, we're going through maybe tough spots or tough employers, but knowing that you're going to really benefit from this in the long run, it's going to provide you experience in doing XYZ, and you can then, appreciate your future one even more. So great. And that is what we have. So I'm going to actually wrap it up here. Thank you so much for joining me today.